Welcome to this episode of Insurance Stats. This is technically episode number 2. And today we have the awesome Matt Sutika and the lovely Sarah Reeves. How's everyone doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm Jeff. I'm wondering if on your tree there during the holidays, if we're going to be able to hang some bulbs.
Ooh,
Oh, yeah.
that's a cool idea. We can have a bubble heads, right? I have plenty
Yeah.
of space for bubble heads behind me.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I know. I have like my pumpkins right now, but they will be my Christmas trees. I'm big into like the glass, which of course I have like a crazy toddler, so I don't know why I put glass decor in my house, but I just like to live on the edge. So white couches, glass decor, we're just, doing all the
That
things.
that sounds straight out of Basic Instinct, but yes.
Oh, yeah. I drive myself insane every day, so it's fine.
Oh, Matt, we're gonna have a good time when the first thought of white couches went to basic.
It's just iconic, It's just white everywhere.
Uh,
So what else is all white, Jeff? You got
I don't
snow,
know.
you got Basic Instinct, and you got
Yeah,
ice cream. That's the three
yeah,
things that are all white.
yeah.
And the Backstreet Boys. I mean,
True.
so unless we're putting on the vanilla suits, and wanting it that way, right? It's Basic Instinct is the all white.
All right, let's talk about agenda for this podcast. This is one of those podcasts that we hopefully after 100 episodes we look back and just laugh at it, right?
Yeah.
We talked about the three of us. Well, actually, we talked about two of us, Matt and myself, to do a podcast, and then we push Sarah into it. We're like, Sarah, get in the water, just
Peer pressure.
and I think let's all maybe throw ideas out there. What do y'all think this show gonna be like? And what are you passionate about to talk about? So Matt, you want to go first, and then Sarah, and I can chime in afterwards.
Yeah, for me, if you're on social media at all, it's just podcast after podcast after podcast. Especially if you lived through the COVID social media cycle where everybody had a podcast, and then if you've been a guest, you've been on everybody's podcast, you've done it. And to me, I can't tell you the difference between podcast one that I've done to podcast 1,000 because it's pretty much the same dang questions. I talk about the same stuff. Sometimes I try to switch it up just because I'm worried that someone's actually gonna be like, "Oh, I already heard him say this," even though probably no one cares about when I'm the guest of the podcast half the time, anyways. But I try to throw stuff out there because it just feels so over and over again. So I think what I want from this is, Jeff, I know you love Joe Rogan, and I think you're just like my wife. You're probably on, 10,000 subscribed podcasts and 50 audio books and all these things, right? I see it with my wife. I was drive back from Disney today or over the weekend, and she's like, download another book and put this podcast on for me, right? I want to be different, and I hope it's a good different and not a bad different. But I want to ask, questions that most other podcasts are not asking, which will hopefully bring on guests that want to tell their story and want to actually talk about things that, they never get to talk about. You've seen it in the movies, you've seen it on TV where the person's just like, I wish someone would ask about my knitting. Everyone wants to talk about politics and what I do as a Democrat or a Republican, but no one ever asked me about my knitting club or my, how good of a cook I am and my real passions. And so I want to bring on people who are seen because of their business world who they are. And that's what's going to be on the tagline and their title. But like, what else makes them tick? Because most likely who they are outside of the business world actually creates who they are within the business world. And if they don't, that's interesting too, right? If they're like Donald Trump, I'll fire yourself, but then they help old ladies cross the street in their personal lead, like, if they have maybe this contrasting where they're, Clark Kent, Superman thing where, at the business world, they're just, hardcore. And then in their personal life, they put more volunteer hours in than, anybody out there. So that's really what I want to get out. I want to ask the tough questions. And I really, more than anything, want to get to those couple moments that we've all had as entrepreneurs or just business people in general, where there's been tears, there's been tough times, there's been that I don't know if I want to do this tomorrow, or I don't know if I can do this tomorrow. And I think that's the key for me is getting into those conversations, because I think then when clips go out on social media and when people see these interviews, they're actually going to be interested, right? I don't know if we'll ever be on Joe Rogan's level, right? Smoking with Elon and creating a million memes off that, but I do hope, at least for our viewers and everything like that, we're providing something that is going to not be just white noise that they plug in while they're doing work every day, right? Just to check the box that they listened to a couple podcasts this week or read a couple books. So that's my hope. If you know my personality, it fits it. I like to ask off the wall questions. I like to joke around. I always tell people, I'll let you know when I'm being serious. Otherwise, just assume I'm being sarcastic or joking around. But yeah, that's the probably minute or two longer than the answer you wanted, Jeff. But that's what I'm looking for. That's why I'm finally willing to jump on as a host and not just a guest.
Yeah, and piggyback on that, what Matt said, I am the special guest, right? I'm assisting or, adding my input as I can as a female in the insurance space, but with the insurance dads, right? So that's what I hope comes across with me in this, with our branding. It's the insurance dads with Sarah Reeves as a special guest, and we'll bring on other people. But it's that connection that I hope we can draw between yes, these are most of the people that we have on the podcast. A lot of them will be in the insurance space, that we're not, just pigeonholing ourselves into that. We hopefully will get other guests as well that aren't specifically directly related to the insurance space or industry. But we want to get to know their personal life, because a lot of the podcasts that we do listen to ourselves, they are these people that are not accessible to us. There are people that have millions and millions of followers. They're most of the time celebrities, right? So these are your typical celebrities, quote unquote, but they are people that we know, that we work with every day, that hopefully our listeners work with every day, that know. And we just want to get to know them on a personal level. Our personal branding at Nimble is to get to know us. It's to get to know Mico Sutika, who he is, who his team is, because we are truly a Nimble family. And so most of the people that we work with have their own families, whether they're children or their pets, or, there's a family, they're a son or daughter, they are someone who has parents or has siblings. So I want to get to know about, what they're passionate about outside of business. So that's, life beyond business, right? That's our tagline. That's what we're hoping to get into. We, do want to obviously focus some on what they do in their professional life, because that's what makes them who they are. As far as like why we decided we wanted to interview them or, have this conversation with them, but we want to know what makes them tick outside of that as well, because that is why they are the person they are. So that's what we hope to get, and hope everybody enjoys. What about you, Jeff? What's your thought? How is it different than your other podcasts?
Thank you for watching this video. Now a quick message from our sponsor, Mav.
Thanks, Jeff. I want to let you all in on a secret that top producing agencies don't want you to know about. If you're in P&C insurance, you know firsthand how much you're getting squeezed by your call center. It's becoming less predictable and less economically profitable to scale. But here's the thing. The top producing agencies making over $100 million are not running their leads through a human-based call center. They're running them through an AI expert like Mav to qualify, quote, and hand deliver the highest intent qualified leads to your agents. Mav takes care of the back and forth, having unlimited 24/7 conversations with your leads that are personal and relevant so you can scale to the moon. Ready to ditch your call center and 10x your agency? We're giving the listeners of insurtech $15,000 worth of credit to try Mav. Head to hiremav.com/insurtech to claim this offer.
Want to bring something interesting, intriguing, different. So here's some numbers, right? Like a lot of people talk about private equity are buying up all the insurance agency owners, right? 35,000 some direct agency owners, and then there's probably 20, 30,000 franchise clusters, network agents. Kind of like there's podcasts like Gilbert Arenas out there for sports, for basketball, and then there's like Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson for basketball up in the smoke. Like they interview a lot of NBA greats or NBA players, like life after basketball, and then they talk about their old days, competing days. I feel like there's a lot of podcasts of existing agents talking to other existing agents about how successful they are in the insurance community. But what about those that have sold, right? And once they get acquired, they go through their earn-out period. What is next? These are entrepreneurs who fought their whole life at a high intense level. And then once they sell, they exit. Like, what's life after exit, right? So I think there's a story to tell, especially in the insurance community. These are some of the most successful people we will ever get on the recording. And to have them reflect back to a career and then also have them talk about what would they done differently? Did they sacrifice too much family time? You know, what does it actually mean when they get that exit they work their entire life for? And how does their life look like tomorrow? And also, I think there's another thing we can talk about when you're talking about having guests on with carriers, with people from the broker space. They say that in the insurance carrier space, there's going to be 500,000 people retiring in the next 2 years, right? So these 500,000 people are taking a lot of experiences away from them, how they build culture the last 2-3 decades. And insurance will look very, very different the next couple of years without those people in the ecosystem. And I think there's got to be somebody tell their stories now that they're sitting. You can't have only so much time playing golf, drink margaritas, and play with your grandchildren, right? So I think there's an audience to listen to those people's stories. So I think that's another cool segment we can dive into on life outside of insurance. And also, like, I did a podcast series called Post ITC Reflection this year. I attended the ITC event in Vegas, 10,000 plus attendees. And then the whole theme was AI, AI, AI. The previous year, the theme was, I don't know, cyber or connectivity. The previous thing was blockchain. I think this is the big one. And the movement doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of people turning out the noise saying, you still need human, you still need VAs, you still need this or that. And I think that's correct to some points. And AI changing our daily lives. So I think it will change insurance. And I think all of us who are making content right now, we are at the ground zero of covering this AI change. How it's going to affect insurance, we will see, right? But we know it will affect us. I mean, some of the guests I interviewed have very dramatic predictions. So these are our opinions, and whatever we get on opinions from our guests and from ourselves are going to be fun things to look forward to, 5 to 6 years from now. And also just one thing on what Matt said, that I probably listen to a lot of podcasts. I actually don't. The only interesting podcasts I listen to are just the ones that people send me. I have very short attention span. What I do,
All right, so a lot of TikTok then.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of intermediate distribution of creator media out there, right? So people absolutely don't create nothing themselves. They take other people's content and cut it up and distribute it and feed my newsfeed, feed my algorithm, right? So I think they're necessary space, right? Like, if you think about the jungle, right? There are the killers, and then there's the feeders who are cleanup, like hyenas and vultures. And that's kind of how I see they are, but it's absolutely necessary.
Are you talking about like that? What's it, like Mario guy, or what's it, Mario or Marcus? Something with that I'm on X with him, and he just constantly reshares, but it's never actually his own content. His name's like Mario, or you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's important that somebody go through all the time to listen to a gazillion out there, right? A gazillion podcasts that's out there, and then cut it up and feed us what our algorithm want to watch. At the end of the day, like, even though long form videos is what captures sponsors, is what capture partnerships, but short form videos is absolutely what draw the views and what gets accounts, will grow the followers. So, I think like something we could do as well as a creator, creator media, is we find other interesting clips, right? Talking about life insurance, life outside insurance, and we just sit here and talk about it. Kind of like editors, right? Think about like this, right? News media and newspapers and Wall Street Journal, right? Like at the end of the day, they take an event, they take a macro event or micro event, and they write a long article. But attention span of people changed. What if we just create 60, 180-second reactions to it? And I think this is where all the creator media is going to, like, So I think it'll be interesting because we have 3 people and 3 complete different set of views. And it'll be interesting to see all 3 of our reaction live. And we can even do some right into it. Like right after this episode, we can go into TikTok and we can just start drawing some reactions, and then everybody have their own reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I think in general, with adding Sarah to this podcast and having, you on, Jeff, and having 3, is that if we can somehow get this out of question answer, or even out of the question answer and maybe little pokes, to getting it really to a just full on conversation where the guest comes on, but they're just slot number 4, and every time we have one of these episodes, it's not just about that individual coming on, which was important, but really just bringing on that individual's brain, right? And we want to hit on all the stuff that I talked about earlier, but let's just talk with that individual about things that are going on in the world, things that are going on in their industry, and like, let's just all have a conversation, very much like if we turn the camera off now, we would talk about, the election coming up, or, as of this recording, I am about to beat Jeff in fantasy football. Maybe we talk about that, but just bringing on really intelligent people to talk about other stuff. One of my favorite things about Elon Musk on X, right, is that he is this insane business, like, genius. But then I see all his different views and weigh in on a million things, not just the hot politics thing right now, but, he's weighing in on ice cream flavors to, what, new rules should happen in politics, to he's weighing in on memes and cryptocurrency and everything like that. And it's just so interesting if you could put that into a podcast, right, where you're bringing on that individual and getting their background, but also just like, hey, Jeff, talk to me now about, just kind of what you just wrapped up. Talk to me about what's going on in the YouTube social space. Talk to me about what's your thoughts on this whole Israel thing? You into that, or nothing about it? Let's keep it PC here, but what's going on? What are your thoughts? How much does stuff like that distract you in your entrepreneur day to day? How much does CNBC stocks going up and down, and you lose some money personally that day? Does that make you a little tighter on the belt with any business decision? Because I know it does for me, right? I know that there's days where the stock market's down, or crypto's down, or these things like that, or I have maybe lost out on a real estate investment. And next thing you know, when my team comes to me for that business expense, I'm a little tighter on it, right? I'm, just naturally. And so that's really what I want to get out of these guests, is talk to me about what's going on. Because if you think you can be an entrepreneur in a box and not have the whole world, around you changing your decisions that you make at your business, you're crazy. It doesn't work that way. Whether you're a small mom or shop business, you have things that affect you to a large business. That's why every CEO and board member and all these things for any of the big companies, they're all involved in politics. They're all involved in, charities and different things going on, right? Because they're not just their company like this, right? They just can't, right? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges a lot of entrepreneurs just never talk about, right? They never talk about how hard it is, to do all the other things. I tell my wife this all the time. I said, I would love a day where I could just go into the office and sell insurance. Just quote some stuff, sell some stuff, because that's really the easy part. It's all the other stuff that makes being a business owner, an entrepreneur, or just in the business world tough. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Jeff?
Yeah. So let's just talk about something you mentioned. You said people, right? Let's, capture these people, their life. And if I took our company LinkedIn page, say I want to boost it, where I'm paying for non-organic, like sponsor ads, impressions, engagements, right? I did the location United States. I did the industry insurance. Take a guess what our audience size is in United States.
You're good with numbers in Excel, not those type of
Throw
numbers.
some number out there. What do you think the
A
insurance
billion.
audience is just on LinkedIn, the people who have LinkedIn accounts?
50,000.
I would say million plus.
Sarah?
Is it 50,000?
50,000.
Is someone going $1?
4.2 million.
Nice.
So our audience size is not small. And, we're pretty tied to UK. So if you add UK to it, LinkedIn audience size is 4.9 million total. Just for giggles, I'm going to add Canada. Oh, Canada. 5.2 million. Now, this is, not limiting any age group, right? So 18 to 75, right? So if I start targeting audience age, geolocations, titles, seniorities, functions, start shredding down the list. But that's the size of list of our audience when we talk about people's life outside of insurance who are in the insurance community. I thought that was interesting.
So get back to my question, Jeff. What impacts you outside of fantasy football and outside of having to repost every hot topic because I am on text, Facebook Messenger, and some other mediums with you, and I get more updates from you on what's going on in the world? I don't even have to worry about it. So what's impacting you every day? I'll give my example while you think about it. So today I am recording with a fake background because my wife had to fly. She's got a big job for Ernst & Young, had to fly last minute to New York. Our nanny quit last week, and now I am trying to be the CEO of my company from a dinner table while I make sure my 1-year-old is doing well. And that stuff is impactful, right? It happens every single day. I could have emailed you guys today and said, hey, I can't make it. I could have told the team, hey, I need the day off, but that just doesn't work in our world, right? And if I hadn't shared that with you guys or shared that with this audience here, people would just expect Matt to kill it today, be the, whatever. And and that just never goes. You never have that perfect day, right? You never have your fantasy football team, all players score. You get, you get a Jordan Love that gets hurt, right? You get a Mason that gets hurt, right? You play the wrong player on your bench. It happens. So, so talk to me about that, Jeff. What goes on with you that just takes you left when you want to go right?
I mean, what I see on the macro is how divided our country is. I mean, you mentioned Israel and Palestine, right? That might be one of the most divisive conversation, not just between left and right, but between left and left, and between right and right. I don't think they can agree on it. There's a lot of things go into it. And Trump made a very interesting discussion last night when he was at the sold out crowd of Madison Square Garden about why we need to elect him. And he said that because of him, we will not send our sons and daughters to the war to get drafted. And he was like, I'm the only president that did not start a war out of all these last 7, 8 presidents. We've been, as a country, at war for 52 plus years. We went to war, proxy, or coup with 50 plus countries. I travel a lot in the last 20 years. And, there's a lot of countries that used to be third world. They have really caught up. And that's something very close to my heart because we haven't put America first. I hate to use a slogan, right? So, as I'm raising 2 daughters, I talked to you about moving to Florida. It's really looking for the best potential possible future environment. There's that saying that bird flies south, right? It's just better environment, right? Every bird looking for the best possible environment for their kids to grow up. So on a macro level, what matters to me is I'm trying to understand like how our country is going to look 10, 20 years from now, like in a long view, and where is the best potential spots. Thank you for all your support to our channel. Here is a quick word from our sponsor. Please click on the link below in the comment section to sign up for a demo with Track AI.
What if your insurance sales conversations could work harder for you? Meet Track, your AI-powered conversation intelligence partner. Track automatically captures and analyzes every customer interaction, providing instant call summaries, risk analysis, and AI-driven coaching insights. Say goodbye to manual note-taking and hello to more selling time. Track handles the admin work while you handle the revenue. Fully integrated with your favorite platforms. Plus, get custom AI analysis tailored to your unique business needs. Transform your sales team's performance with Track. Visit track.ai today.
Click the link in the description below to schedule a demo with Track today.
The world is, in the macro level, is a distraction, or it's implementing, or it's taking away from what you're doing day to day running insurtech IO right now, not because you're like, hey, squirrel, right? But because it's impacting, right? You're waiting to see what's going on in that macro world. So, if you can move your family. The only crazy part about that is you're looking at moving closer to me, which, could be risky. Right. And I think, in general, that's what I've gotten to know you better, is that, you're out there in the social world, right? Like you're reposting, you're reading, and you're probably just getting, information overload. Cause I would assume for as much as you're throwing out, people are throwing in. I would just guess that once you start to be someone like you are, that sends out posts or tags or reposts or constantly sharing articles, that people start doing that to you like crazy. And so you probably love to just take your phone and like flip it over sometimes, I would assume, when you're really trying to concentrate on something. I know for Sarah, one of the main reasons we really wanted her on this podcast is to give just a total different view than you and I, even though Sarah's in our fantasy football league. I want to give her the perspective, like the parenting perspective, Sarah, like weigh in, tell me about the distractions of our little guy. How is it, for you in the working world to balance the distractions you have, right? I mentioned the no nanny, you're dealing with that all the time in different ways, right?
Yeah, and we're all parents, right? I'm in a different spot than you guys. I'm in Houston, Texas. So that brings its own challenges too, especially with, we're sort of talking about the political environment and just, what's going on in the world today. But people are right here. There's a lot going on in Houston, Texas that is impacting some other parts of the world as well, or the country, but we see a lot right here. We are close to the southern border. That's just, we're thinking about our sons too right now. But yeah, where's our country going to be in 10 years when he's starting, getting in school, and 15 years from now when he's starting to drive, and there's just, just the influx of people on the road, and just so many things going on, like going out and doing things by himself. We had a, guest last week talking about how they're getting to the stage where they don't need the parents anymore. They want to go to parties with their friends, and that's impactful. And then you also have, like, as a business owner, you guys are thinking about, okay, that's affecting us personally, but also you have staff that's affecting, and then they come to work and they're trying to, put a face on, and they're, or sometimes, there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors that we don't always know about, and it's just giving that grace where you can, but also knowing that, okay, if someone's not doing what they need to be doing that day, like, there also has the job that needs to be done, right? So that's a challenge, and it's dealing with people is hard. You guys know it. I mean, I know it from running offices and, dealing with it's people have their own individual challenges. And then you have to, even though sometimes your beliefs or what's going on in your life might not directly align with those, but you have to have that, common ground and be able to have a conversation with someone and show empathy, but also be hard enough to be like, okay, we have to get the job done. So, that is hard in itself too. I mean, how do you guys, I guess my question to y'all is, how do you combat that, or how do you deal with that, dealing with your own personal things, the challenges that you face with your employees or, your team around you? How do you do that? What's been the biggest, there's no perfect answer, but
I struggle.
Your best tip or technique, because hopefully a lot of people watching this are going through those challenges as well. What has seemed to work? What challenges have you gone through that have not worked? You're like, scrap that, let's start over something else. I think we all have those experiences. So I love to hear what you guys think there.
For me, I talk about that I'm the hardest working person in the world in my business life, and I'm lazy as can be in my personal life. And that's just the perception for me a lot of times, is that I also have a business that has a lot of employees at it that are family and very close friends that are basically family. And then, even employees who are somewhat family through marriage. And so you have that aspect. So I tend to, thankfully for my wife, or not thankfully for my wife, thankfully I have my wife, but not that I'm like this way. It is that I will put off everything. I will do my entire business checklist before I book a family vacation. I will work until it's a little embarrassing for me to be on camera before I get a haircut. Those are real challenges, and I always, there's a lot of times, unfortunately, I can't see it as much with the vest on, but, I could probably eat a little bit better, work out a little bit more. And so the neglect for me is real in my personal life, and it makes it a challenge because I constantly wonder, how can I continue this business level of success, but then, take care of the asset, which is my family, the asset that is, even my body, in there. And I struggle with that. I don't feel like I struggle as much in the business world because I feel more in control and it's something that I'm passionate about and go. But, all the time I'm having conversations with my wife where she's like, when can you come home? Can we do this? And I get a lot of this where I kind of like shake. I'm just like, I gotta work, and it's like, it gives that anxiety a little bit sometimes for me that, I want to, I mean, if you follow me on social media or you just know me in general, like I want to spend all the time in the world with my kids, and I feel like it's a roller coaster of, well, you're a business owner. No one tells you when you can and can't work. Like, why don't you just take a couple days off a week and go to the zoo, right? Or, is being home at 5 really good if it takes 2 hours away from the business? Is leaving in the mornings at 5 a.m. compared to going in at 9 is, so that balance. So that would be my biggest thing in this entrepreneur world is I sometimes do not know how to blend the business and work world, where I'll use the example, my wife is phenomenal at it. I mean, she'll start at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., whatever. And it's like, she'll do email for 30 minutes and then she'll cook a breakfast. She'll burp a baby. Then she'll write a letter to the CEO, and then she'll go do a workout and then come back for 2 Zoom meetings. And then she'll walk the baby on the next Zoom meeting. Like, I wish I could take some of that from her and apply it a little bit, cause it's like, for me, it's like when I leave the house, it's business until I like come home. And then I'm almost sometimes like trying to get through the personal stuff so I can like get back on email. Cause all of a sudden I see some, trying to get my phone here on camera, but I see some email that pops in at 7 when I'm trying to put my kid to bed. And I'm like, oh, I gotta go respond to them right now. Cause it's the world we live in. Right.
I
So
really think that
that's
is
my big thing.
interesting, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And I don't know, Jeff, if you have this feeling as well, but I will say, like, as being a spouse who has a very similar husband, where it's work mode a lot of the time, and then when he is present as a dad, best dad in the absolute world, but a lot of times it's work focused. And it is that a lot of people don't talk about it, I don't think, because it is that, as much as I know for me as being a mom, a lot of my social media is geared towards that, right? It's like tips and tricks of how to, handle your baby or do things like this, or especially now in the toddler stage. But a lot of it is, I talked about it last week, but it is the negative, like, oh, life's so hard because you can't ever shut it off. You're always at home, the baby's there 24/7. And yeah, I feel that personally. I mean, it is like the baby's always here. And I'm I'm not the default parent, but when he needs comfort, he's coming to me, which I'm going to miss that someday. So I'm grateful for the time that I have. But just as much as the moms feel that at home, I know my spouse feels that. I know you guys feel that. Like, you can't just shut it off. It's not just okay just because you left the office. There's no like office in your mind, right? It is we have so much access through our phones that used to not be the case, right? It used to you had to sit down on the computer, you had to check your email in a certain way. Now everyone has access that way. So especially if you have an Apple Watch, it's always popping up on your wrist, or your phone's dinging, you're seeing that. And that is like you're going back to work mode. So it's very hard to balance that. Jeff, I mean, do you see that in your personal life too? Like, how does your spouse like react to that? How does she handle that? It's a challenge.
Recently, probably the last 6, 7 months, my spouse transition. She went from work mom to mom, and taking pressure off me, just allow me to focus. So I'm probably working twice as hard as before these days because I get a lot more support from her now that she's a full-time mom, full-time wife, and really helped me because a lot of people know that I work a lot, but now I'm working a lot without distractions. So I'm maximizing my time even more. So like, what's important to me is my time. That's the most valuable asset I have. I only have so much of it. And now, without the little things that distract me from having to do this as a dad, do that as a husband, because she's stepping in to do more of it. And that allowed me to have the purity of those time I have all to myself and all to my work. I know this sounds selfish, but all to my work and all to the people I work for and work with. Earlier, the last subject, we talked about distraction, and this subject, we talked about what's changing, I guess. Anyway, so I just want to like cut into something. Last Friday, I had a gentleman named Bo Bratton on my podcast on Founder's Journey, and we talked about this off the recording about how not to just have amazing career, but how to have amazing life. And he brought up the author, which is the two couples that he follows, called Mind Valley, MIND Valley.com, right? So I just click on their website because I haven't really read into it. And he said that he did this exercise that really helped him as a ultra high successful entrepreneur, and at the same time build a life. And here's the 12 dimensions of your life: health and fitness, intellectual, emotional, character, spiritual, love, relationship, parenting, social, career, financial, quality of life, and life vision. And they interview like 2,000 people's stories. So we talk about life outside insurance. A lot of things are integrated, but I think we'll have fun not just covering our guest stories, but stay on this journey with each other and talk about our own personal journeys as Matt transitioned to his new nanny, as Sarah transitioned to joining us on another podcast episode. I mean, all these little things. So I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I like that. And I'll need to go like look at that book too. But it is different. Like, those are a lot of things at one time though. I'm thinking about that, and it's like, when you're saying that you're able to really focus on your work, and that's amazing and that's great, and thankful to your spouse for allowing you to do that. But then it's, how much time do you put towards, okay, so are you just doing like mornings and evenings with your kids? Like, does she ever need you? It's that, like, that strength from both sides that I think people don't talk about enough, really, because it does take a lot. It takes equally as much to raise a family as it does to provide for a family, so both parts are equal in that. I mean, I know the state of our country right now, and there's a lot, like, thankfully the three of us are in, to where we both have both parents in the household with the family, but that's not always the case, so it's where we can, be better for our kids if something were to happen with divorce or something like that. It's really hard. And like thinking about those things and challenges that people face, because that's real. A lot of people have parents that don't stay together, or, we're in that stage of life now that we know friends that don't stay together, with their spouses, and they have children, so it's a big deal. And that cuts into, like what Matt was saying, being a business owner, being that, like, those are just all things that come with dealing with people every day that, you can't always account for. But it's like, I think it's important to talk about, because we're in the society now where people are more open and honest about things, which I'm grateful for, because it does give that, someone else is going through it too kind of perspective. But it's still, I think a lot of people try to shut that off when it comes to business, or it comes to LinkedIn. It's more just like, okay, here's this article that I saw, find out what's going on. But it would help to have, I think that's the point of us doing this, but have that personal connection to someone, be like, oh, they're actually like going through this, and I like that they're talking about it, because we all struggle with this, but no one really wants to bring it up. So I think it's important for us to talk about and really invite other people to communicate that with us.
I have an interesting question, and maybe our audience can help us find the answer. If there's 4.2 million people who could potentially follow us, part of the insurance community, and we're talking about life outside of insurance, then which is family, right? What do you think the divorce rate is for the people in the insurance industry?
Ooh, I mean, I don't know, Matt, you might have a bet. I don't know, like your like friends, agents that I mean, I'm trying to think of, other agents or brokers that I've been around that, I mean,
I would think it's probably the same as, any business owner. I don't know if, I know there used to be a statistic about, high suicide rate being like dentists or something like that. So I don't know if insurance has a higher or lower there. I actually, which is probably not what you would expect, but I actually would think, and I would take the low end. I would say that if it was 30% or 50%, whatever it was, I would say that it's half. And the only reason why is, I'll go back to my State Farm days. I think there's a lot of broker owners that have a little bit more of a family presence than I see with a lot of other businesses, where, in general, I remember the State Farm trips, everyone was married, everyone had kids. There was very few divorced and single. So, from what I see on social media, a lot of married, a lot of family, a lot of kids. But again, I could be looking at the 2%, not the 98%. I'm sure Jeff is probably actively Google searching this right now. But yeah, I think the probably the sentiments that I'm talking about are more important than what the number is, what are we actually seeing? I do see a very family oriented, more married, more kids when I look at the insurance industry than I see a lot of divorce rate jumping out of windows that I might tend to see in some of the other financial sectors.
Well, Jeff does have the answer for you. So Jeff, of course.
It's just random Google. I put divorce rate insurance, and statistics data reveals that actuaries, a profession in the insurance industry, boast the lowest divorce rate at 17%. The U.S. average is 50 to 55% first marriage, and 60 to 70% the second marriage.
See, Jeff, you don't need Google anymore. I'm your guy. So I mean, just ask Sutika if you ever need anything, Jeff. Including maybe a better fantasy football team, whatever you need.
Shot.
That is so interesting. I'm curious to see other people who are better at search than I am can tell me about divorce rate in the US.
Jess, sometimes you gotta just put away the Google, put away the social media, and just what do you see? Just what does Jeff see? There used to be those bracelets. It's like, what would Jesus do? I'm gonna get one that says like, what does Jeff see outside of TikTok? What's your feel? What's your gut? So I think that's a good segue to maybe wrap this up here for our episode. I think what I've discovered in this hour conversation is that we probably don't know where this is going to be in a year from now. I just hope that it's still running and still going, and I didn't get too crazy, or Jeff didn't move down here by my way, and we open up a sandal shop instead or something. But really, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways we can go with this. I think the most important thing is challenging that if a year from now, you see these people on X, they say it all the time. They're like, oh, Bitcoin doesn't hit 100K, I'm going to delete my Twitter. I think that if we're still the same old podcast that everyone's listened to, and it just as level as the rest of them, we delete the podcast, right? I think that's the level that we want to be at. Is we want to be where that would be upsetting to people if all of a sudden that notice went out, right? Just like right now, if Elon said, hey, if something happens in the political, I'm going to close down X, right? Like there would be a lot of people to be like, no, I don't want that to happen. And hopefully we have similar sentiments to our podcast here, that people, whether it's our five people or 5 million people, or 4.2 if you include UK and Canada and Mexico and all the other ones, hopefully some people care in multiple languages. So Jeff,
what
you
crypto are you
wrap
holding?
this up?
What crypto are you holding?
You want me to list the ones I'm not, Jeff? I'm a degenerate when it comes to the old cryptos. So it might be easier out of the.
What's your top 80% portfolio?
Bitcoin and ETH. I mean, I think clearly, I've been in it long enough to lose out on some memes and to win some memes, and get some stuff taken from me, have some zeros, things like that. If you made money in crypto outside of just like randomly, you've had those stories and those are for another time. But like, no one's been in crypto for 4 or 5+ years that hasn't got scammed or lost something or should have sold or this or that. And you kind of eventually learn that, it probably makes a lot of sense to be a good majority in the bigger fish. Now, if I was doing it full time, that might skew a little bit, but for the, as I get a CoinStats alert that the market's down, I thought Bitcoin was up today, but anyways, really that's, I'm looking at it, the big boys, and then I'll take 10% to play with some of the speculative ones. And, maybe that is an episode, Jeff, that we should do of life outside of insurance, or life out of the business world, is talk about crypto, talk about, our business. We did a BTC whole meeting over at Nimble, where I supplied Bitcoin to each one of my team members, and we talked about it. Important. So that might even be something that we incorporate into this, is the questions about crypto to our audience. I know it's a hot topic. Whether you love it or hate it, you have something to say. So that might be something also, Jeff. I think you're maybe onto something there. Maybe we bring those in as a question set, because it is important, and there's a lot of cool things. And there is some cryptos that I could see that with the blockchain really revolutionizing the insurance space. With blockchain, maybe that recreates the MDR system. Maybe it recreates loss runs. Can you imagine having that data out on a blockchain that can't be removed or changed or edited, and everyone having access to it? I know we do an apartment insurance, and I know myself and my clients would love to be able to just go to a blockchain and pull data on a complex and not have to deal with other brokers or individuals who can't get the loss run. So but yes, pro crypto, and really pro technology, pro a lot of the stuff going on in the world. Still know about 1% probably, but that 1% is better than 0.
Sarah, hit us up with some parting thoughts.
I'm just excited, to maybe reach some different viewers that, Jeff, you're on some other podcasts, you have some other things going on, but, and I'm sure there'll be some, dipping into both, but, some of the viewers that we have, but I hope we reach a different crowd as well. And I think we will. I think it's important to talk about this. There's some educational aspect to it, as in like what just Matt was talking about, with some big Bitcoin blockchain, when we did our Nimble meeting, a lot of people didn't know necessarily the, little details about it. So it's important to talk about because people have heard these terms, but they don't always know about it. So yes, we'll talk about challenges. We want to get to know our guests, and just really have a good conversation. But I think we'll bring some education aspect to it as well. Jeff, quick on the keys with Google, and you'll find some good data for us,
And I'll just make stuff up.
Yeah. So it'll be good. We'll ask Sutika and then we'll fact check it. So we'll be the true fact checker.
It'll be like the debates.
Yeah, right?
Apparently I'm on the red side. I got this. I'm with you.
So go back to the crypto thing, and I'm pro crypto as well. I always wanted to do this, and maybe not with this office background, but one day if I have my own studio, right, where I'm inviting guests, come onto my show, and we're sitting there chopping up like Rogan style, right? Part of my wall, I want to have are having literally Bitcoin miners in the background. You know how you can have those Bitcoin miners and make it look cool, but I'll put it behind glass so this way the noise is not too loud, and somehow figure out the ventilation systems. But just imagine like while we're sitting here and then behind there's machines that's actually solving mathematical problems on Bitcoin mining, right? Solutions. And
You got to get on that, Jeff. That we're almost out of all the mining.
if I just have one machine in the background going, it'll be so loud and there's nothing we can hear, right? But I know there's some
Some of the
quiet ones out there.
wildest ideas, Jeff, and I love them. People are going to get some crazy ideas from you.
I'm glad you brought up that it's a machine, because there were some people who cut out on this episode like 10 seconds before that, and they're thinking like Snow White miners are going to be behind. And this is how we get canceled, Jeff. They think that you're wanting some. Were they the dwarfs, the seven dwarfs, and Snow White, and mining behind you in a room?
Yeah.
And when I said I'd like this to last a year, looks like episode 3 is this is just like what's his name, Kevin Costner's new movie. It was coming and then they just pulled it, before the second one, right? It was like coming in August, number 2, and then Jeff's is having miners behind him for a podcast, and we're done.
Talk about something we could get canceled for. So
No. No. And with that, Jeff, it has been great chatting with you today.
Thank you for watching the Insurance Stats podcast. It's been great.
All right. Until the next episode.
All right. See y'all.
Bye.